I'm Stan Lee. I've been writing stories for the young generation for the past 30 years.
Iron Man is considerably one of the most recognisable and iconic Marvel heroes. But was he always intended that way? And how did Stan Lee and Marvel change that?
Iron Man.
Stan Lee, the man behind the Playboy billionaire, originally set out to create a character who he thought would be hated by the audience, but over time would eventually come to like the character. This great idea came to fruition under terrible circumstances.
There is a war going on in South Vietnam. I think last week there were over 500 killings, assassinations, bombings. The casualties are high. It's I said last week, a subterranean war, guerrilla war.
During the Vietnam War, anti-war protests began. The movement had many young supporters at the time, but also had a share of backlash. This is where the idea came from, for an industrial and weapon manufacturing character, otherwise known as Iron Man. Stan knew it would appeal to the younger audience at the time, especially with so many students protesting around America. It was only a matter of time before things had to change. Early 2000s, and Marvel were finding difficulty with a defined story for their franchise. Although X-Men had an early success and some other great movies during this time, the company was struggling.
Here, right this way. It's blind. You can't see anything.
The company needed something new and headhunted their next director. Their budget at the time meant that they had to search for directors who were up and coming, and this led them to Jon Favreau, someone who had been acting and directing for a little while now. He'd even been in a Marvel production before. In 2003, he starred alongside Ben Affleck in the under-par comic book movie Daredevil. This job role had opened the door for Jon Favreau. He could now connect with staff who were well established at Marvel, and in early 2005, when production for the movie began, Kevin Feige and David Maisel finalised his position as director.
My background as a filmmaker is not in this sort of genre. I've dabbled a little bit in special effects in Zathura and Elf, but really I come from more of an independent background, primarily a comedic background.
It was time to find an actor, and one who could portray the Iron Man in Marvel Studios' first film.
I really wanted to offer a human side that would fit in with my sensibility of filmmaking. And in assembling the cast that I did between Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Bridges, Gwyneth Paltrow, Terrence Howard, that's a cast that I would be happy to have in a drama or a comedy. We're about to do Tony Stark experimenting with the combination of boots and gauntlets. It's his first successful flight in his workshop.
Many names had been circled back and forth between executives at Marvel, the likes of Tom Cruise and Sam Rockwell. Timothy Olyphant was an ideal candidate too, but when Favreau met Robert, he knew he'd found his Tony. Robert had spent the last few years rebuilding his reputation in Hollywood, and when he got the opportunity to frontline the new phase of the Marvel world, he grabbed it with both hands.
There were dark days, and I would say to Robert, we wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for you. Meaning, we wouldn't have a studio if it wasn't for him.
That's true. I remember sitting down with the guy, and I was like, geez, he just got it in it. He's got that spark in him and his eye, and he's ready.
Action.
Oh, Mr. Stark, you have been described by some as a Da Vinci for our time. What do you have to say about that?
Da Vinci, ridiculous. I don't paint.
Iron Man was a very successful strip, and they're making a movie of him now.
I think everybody winds up, for the most part, getting the jobs they're supposed to get.
I'm just so glad that it hasn't been done and done well already, you know, and there's a certain destiny to it. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, obviously, I'd have been too young or not quite ready or seasoned enough to do it.
We are so lucky. Robert Downey Jr. playing this role. I was born under a lucky star, I gotta tell you.
It's important to remember that in context of the times, Iron Man was originally meant to be disliked by the readers, but over time, through storytelling and personality, he would hopefully become a fan favourite. This has transpired throughout the Iron Man movies. It is impossible to know what Iron Man would have been like without Robert Downey Jr., but the character and actor are now entwined for life. Through Stan Lee's creativity and imagination, and Robert's tenacity to take this role under his wing, both made something that most people will never forget.